Welcome to the Schools of Excellence podcast, where we have conversations about education, leadership, and building a school of excellence. The goal on this show is to bring you clarity, up-level your mindset, and give you practical strategies and inspiration so you can show up with confidence and trust your decision-making. I'm Chani Olshansky. I'm a mom of 4 under 10, a former New Yorker, and been in the early childhood field my entire life. And I'm so grateful that you've joined me for this conversation. Hey there, welcome back to another episode of the Schools of Excellence podcast. You are joining me here today for an incredible interview with Ron Spreeuwenberg from HiMama. HiMama provides childcare centers with tools to more efficiently manage staff and classroom scheduling, tuition billing and payments, and classroom learning activities while engaging parents to drive better educational outcomes for their children. Ron and I have had multiple conversations. I've been on the HiMama podcast several times. I've done multiple webinars for HiMama. We really enjoy our collaboration together. And today we talk about HiMama's inception. We talk about how to build a great client experience for your clients in your childcare center, how to up-level the care of your childcare centers, and what is to come for the rest of 2023. I hope you enjoy my conversation with Ron from HiMama. Well, Ron, I am so excited to have you here on the Schools of Excellence podcast. I have been a guest of the preschool podcast, the HiMama podcast, several times, and it's always been a joy to be on the show with you. So I'm just grateful to have you here. Thanks for joining me.
I'm so glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So I found out about HiMama, several years ago when I first heard about your podcast. And I think I sent you like a podcast pitch. I'm like, hey, I've got some fun stuff to talk about. Like, let me come on to your show and let's have a conversation. I've since been following closely to the work that you guys are doing, the development of your software, the webinars, the content that you guys are putting out. And so you've got a pretty robust program and system that you guys are putting together. And I'd love for us to kick off here with, why did you start HiMama? Tell us a little bit about your starting story.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of my inspiration goes way back to my family, and my grandparents were farmers, and my dad was actually a mushroom farmer. That's what he did for his job day to day. But I know he always wanted to do something entrepreneurial, but he was in a very bad car accident. And that kind of held him back a lot, I think, from being able to take more risk and start his own company and do his own thing. So, I was always keen to do something entrepreneurial and start my own business, but also to start a business that had a lot of the values that my dad showed throughout his life. And so that's kind of the second part of why HiMama was, I wanted to start a company that would have a social impact and have some social good. So when I put the two together and I was kind of exploring what are the opportunities out there in the world, I stumbled upon childcare and early childhood education, and where I really realized that this was the place I would want to spend my time to try to help was when I met with childcare program owners and directors in person. And I met with about 50 of them and just sat down and talked to them. And it was very clear to me then that a lot of folks were looking for help, and the work that they do is so hard, it's so difficult, and there's really not many organizations, associations, other people to turn to for help. And, I just thought this was a good place where I felt like I really could help people. And that was where the early passion started. But then when I started to learn more and more about early childhood education as well, just in terms of how under-recognized and underfunded it is and all of those other pieces, then my passion for the space just has only increased over the years.
So I love your starting story just about, growing up on the farm and strong values. I'm curious about, because I've been talking a lot about values-based leadership. In our community, our event in March is all about building legacy through values-based leadership. And I find more and more as things get harder and harder in just the political and economic landscape, values are really what drives so much of the decision making and then what anchors the company. And so I'd love to hear if you could share just what are even just one or two of the company values that are kind of this North Star for you all.
Yeah, so we have 3 core values at HiMama. The first one is be a good person, which to me is just table stakes. And that means when we're interacting with each other, with our customers, with partners in the community, it doesn't matter who, being a good person is really table stakes to HiMama and to me, I think fundamentally in the world. The second one is work hard and win. And that's, one of the values I take from family, having worked in agriculture. Hard work is part of how I grew up. But at the same time, we're not shy to say we want to win. And the reason why that is our third core value, which is own positive change. And the reason why we need to win to own positive change is that I want to have social impact at scale. And the bigger we are, the more we can win, the larger our reach and the more impact that we can have. And part of the underlying aspect of that is we are a social enterprise, which means we use business as a force for good. And that's actually validated for HiMama by a third party as a certified B corporation. And what that means is we're using our ability to generate our own revenue and our own profits to invest back into our growth and our impact in our community. So it's one thing to have, let's say a simple example is a coffee shop on the corner that has responsibly sourced coffee beans and ingredients, and that's wonderful. But if Starbucks does it with thousands or tens of thousands of location, the impact is much, much greater. And so that's kind of the thinking with social enterprise and business as a force for good.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Wow. Okay. So let's dive into, there's so many features to the HiMama app and what you guys do, but I would love to touch on the parent communication piece, because I think parent communication sometimes becomes something that people only focus on when it gets hard, or when they're like, oh my gosh, like parents are dropping off, we need to talk to them. So would love to hear a little bit more about why parent communication and engagement is so important from your perspective.
Yeah, that's really where we started at HiMama, was with a really big focus on parent engagement. The reason why, just a bit more practically, is that most young parents today are digital natives, which means they grew up with smartphones and access to digital information. And most childcare and early education programs are not meeting them where their needs are at. So they are used to, making their mobile order and going to pick up their food in real time. They are used to getting real-time updates and information about every kind of thing you can imagine: sports, stocks, the weather, the election results, everything except the most important thing in their life, their young child in childcare program. So part of it is, I would say we have a responsibility as childcare and early education programs to meet the needs of our customers, which are our families. They're the ones who are paying the bills for us in most cases. So that's really the practical side. But the other side, which you're kind of hinting at there as well, is the parent experience is absolutely critical to the overall experience with the childcare program and with the child and their outcomes as well. So I think, of course, the first and foremost, most important thing is the child's development in the center, working with the educators directly in those relationships. No one, I think, would ever argue that is the most important thing of all. But when you compare it to, let's say, other industries and examples, like let's just take a restaurant, for example. Their number one most important thing, and the reason you go to a restaurant is to have food. And, you want to have good food. But when you think about your experience with the restaurant, maybe it's also how easy was it for me to make a reservation? When I showed up on time for my reservation, were they ready for me? Or did I have to wait? When I sat down, how quickly did they take my order? Were the utensils and dishes clean? And when I was done, were they prompt to ask me if I would like my bill so I could settle and go on to the next thing in my life? These are all things that aren't about the food, but they're absolutely central to your experience. And if you look at reviews of restaurants, lots of times it's about these other things. And the same thing applies for childcare and early education is, of course, the health, safety, and learning and development of the children is at the center. That is the value of childcare and early childhood education. But there's so many of these aspects around that are having a huge impact, not only on the parent experience, but the children as well, because the more involved the parents are and the more informed the parents are about what's happening in the programs, the more that they can take that into their home and provide the best possible extension of that learning and development at home.
Wow. It's so interesting just to hear your perspective on all these different really important topics and conversations that people want to have. And I think that it's interesting that you compared it to the restaurant industry. Oh gosh, now I'm going to forget the name of the restaurateur. One of these very famous chefs posted on his profile recently that the tables in a restaurant are a daily focus group to the current state of the economy. And so someone asked him, what do you mean by that? He's like, well, when you go to the restaurant and you look at the tables, is it full? Are tables being turned over? What are people ordering? That's a focus group to what does the economy look like right now? And I thought that was such an interesting insight into, I feel like parents in the educational space is very much the same concept, where when we're engaging with our families, it gives us this focus group into what are parent concerns right now, what is going on in the world, and how do we stay connected with them, stay ahead of it, and also make sure that we're providing the best possible service for them.
Yeah, if I'm being really honest about where things are in the childcare sector today, there's still quite a ways to go to get to where some other sectors are at in terms of thinking about what you're delivering and the value you're delivering from the perspective of the user or customer experience. And so in this case, you can think about it, maybe you want to think about it from the perspective of parents. Maybe you want to think of it from the perspective of the child. It doesn't matter, but the inverse of that is thinking about things of, what do I need as a director? What is troubling me right now? How can I make my life easier? As a teacher, how can I make my life easier? What can I do better? Versus thinking more from the perspective of the children or the parents. And a big part of that is getting the feedback. And I've actually always been very surprised at how few decisions within childcare organizations and programs are made based on input and feedback from.
Yeah, Ron, I so agree with you on this. And could we talk about this for a second? I actually want to go in this direction here for a moment. I'd love to hear from you. What do you believe are some of the roadblocks that childcare owners and leaders have in inviting parents into more of the decision-making process?
I think they're afraid about what they're going to hear, actually. I think oftentimes, you were saying this earlier, that lots of times the parent communication ends up being when there's a fire, when there's a problem, when there's a challenge. And I think that results in oftentimes having a feeling of anxiety or stress about an interaction with a parent, because you're correlating that to, whenever those interactions happen, they are stressful for me. But to your point, if you're having those interactions frequently, and there's lots of research behind this as well, the more frequent the interactions, the more the trust is built over time.
Yeah, 100%.
Even if you think about yourself, and whether that's a personal relationship or a professional relationship, the more you communicate with somebody and the more transparent those communications are, the more trust there's going to be in. And that also applies to negative feedback. If parents provide negative feedback, that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing, because that means, you've given them a forum to air that out, which makes them feel good because now they've gotten it off their chest and they know that you're listening to them and you want to get their feedback. And B, you have it. So now you actually know, what you might be able to do to help improve that experience for parents.
Yeah, this mindset piece around being concerned about what people are going to say and their feedback. It's real stuff, Ron. It's really hard. It's really hard, especially for childcare owners. Really, any business owner puts their heart and soul into their product, into what they're building. And it's, even though feedback is good, it's hard to process. And you really have to develop this unbreakable mindset around, this isn't going to break me. This only makes me stronger. So I appreciate your insight into that. I'd love to hear a little bit about just how you've seen, like, with parents getting insight into what's going on in their child's day and being able to communicate in real time. How do you see that really up-leveling in general the quality care across the world in early childhood centers? Why is it important for this to happen?
I think the most important thing of all, which has absolutely nothing to do with HiMama and what we do in our technology and everything to do about early childhood education, is we need the world to know how important early childhood education is, how difficult the career of being an early childhood educator is. And HiMama and our technology and communicating information to parents is one avenue of many, but a very important one, because of the ease through which you can share information to inform and educate families about the importance of early childhood education. And with that information and that knowledge about the importance, there's going to come more recognition, more funding, more emphasis placed on early childhood education, which is what we're all striving to achieve. And the way we sometimes see that play out, just to make that more practical, for example, we'll have childcare programs that start using HiMama, and they start getting all this feedback back from parents. Wow, we can't believe all the creative things you're doing with our children, and wow, the level of effort that must go into what you do every day. We had no idea. And they say to us, well, we're not doing anything different. We're doing what we've always done, but they're now just able to share that with families, and families are able to see all the amazing work that educators do, which was just, a total black hole to them before.
Yeah, there's so much to think about here. I'm processing while I'm talking and trying to sit in everything that you're sharing here.
I just wanted to go back to one of the earlier conversations as well, and just the importance of social enterprise and the fact that we can have, this ties back to that. The more childcare programs that are using HiMama or something like HiMama,
Sure.
I'm not making this about HiMama.
Sure.
This is about getting out to the world the amazing work that early childhood educators do. And again, the more programs that are able to share that information on a daily basis, the more we're going to get that word out there. Yes, it's important we advocate through the government and public policy and whatnot. Sure it is. We need to continue to do that. But ultimately, the answer to me personally, I believe, lies in what every early childhood educator does every day. Are you telling your families about the amazing work that you do and how important early childhood education is? If every educator did that every day, it would change the world and the way the world thinks about early childhood.
Yeah, I'd love to kind of bring everything here full circle on what are you excited, what you guys have coming up in 2023, any new things that you guys are doing in HiMama, or just in general, what are you excited about when it comes to the direction that you see early childhood going in?
Oh, we're very excited about 2023.
Let's hear. Let's hear, Ron. Spill the beans.
Well, one thing that has always made HiMama different, I believe, is how connected we are to the early childhood community and how much we genuinely care about what early childhood educators care about, their challenges, their problems, and really trying to help them with those. We want to follow their agenda, how we can help them, not our agenda and what we need as a company. And, we talked a lot about what are all the ancillary things that we can do to help in early childhood education. So parent communications and keeping parents informed, for example. HiMama also helps with things like attendance and having the right ratios of educators to children and invoices to parents and accepting payments and all these kinds of things that do help with making the parent experience the best that it can be. But we're also very excited about helping childcare and early childhood education programs with what they're most passionate about, which is children's learning and development. And that's where you're going to see some big changes with HiMama through 2023 with curriculum and professional development. We're very excited about what's coming there. And this really changes the game for us from being, a bit more of this technology company to what I will go so far as to say is a diversified education company, and really putting the why around the most important thing in early childhood education, which is the education, the learning and development.
I remember us having this conversation a while back, so I'm excited to hear like this, really coming to fruition. I don't remember if I was talking to you or Kia or someone from the team. So I love that you guys are really, again, it's a big part of the mission, like really just up-leveling the quality of childcare. I think this is going to be an exciting direction, and I hope that a lot of early childhood leaders take advantage of what it is you have to offer. Ron, I don't want to be generalized like that. Let me get more specific. What do you think early childhood leaders need to be thinking about as we enter 2023? What should they be reflecting on or thinking about? Like, what are you seeing from your vantage point as a leader in this space?
I think with the context of the largest challenge in early childhood education being the acquisition and retention of early childhood educators, I think the big thing that folks need to be focused on is, what is my experience for early childhood educators? We talk a lot about the parent experience, the family experience. What's the experience for educators? Because, folks who are educators out there will know that a child's development all starts with, what is the mind space of the educator that's interacting with that child and building the relationships with that child. So I would encourage listeners to really think about how they're empowering early childhood educators and their teams, because that is what really changes the game for the quality of your programs, in my opinion, is the educators. And we really need to invest in them. And oftentimes it's just small things. Again, using HiMama, we oftentimes get this feedback that, the educators are getting a lot of recognition and kudos for the work that they do, which they weren't receiving before. So those small things, that recognition goes a really long way when you're having a tough day as an early childhood educator. And lots of ECs out there do have tough days, and those small things of recognition, whether that's through the director of the program or from their families or from their peers, goes a really long way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Ron, thank you so much. Where can people go to find out more about you and the work that you are all doing? And we'll have all of those links in the show notes as well.
Yeah, best place to go is HiMama.com. It's HiMama.com. Lots of resources there to check out, including links to the preschool podcast, which is the weekly podcast series.
Yes, it's an amazing show. Definitely. If you listen to the Schools of Excellence podcast, add that to your roster.
Yeah, check it out. We do webinars. We have our professional development product academy, where you can get certificates for your own learning and development as an early childhood educator, and much, much more. So it's all at HiMama.com.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here, Ron. And thank you for sharing your gift with the world. Thank you.
Always a pleasure. Thanks, Connie.
If you are loving the Schools of Excellence podcast and have gotten any value out of it for your school, I would love if you can do two things for me. One, subscribe to the show so you never miss an episode. And two, can you please leave us a review? Reviews help other school leaders know that this is the place to learn how to build a school of excellence. And I would be so grateful if you can do that for us. Your help and support makes this show to be able to be listened by the thousands of other school leaders all around the world. Thanks so much for listening, for giving us your time and attention each and every week, and I appreciate that you have joined us.